Elizabeth Langburton of Certified Credit's Talk Data to Me podcast. And joining me today is Scott Fink and Ben Hoen of Weltman, Weinberg Reis. How are you guys doing today?
Great, Elizabeth. Thanks so much for having us.
Absolutely. Thank you for being here. And
glad to be here.
Thanks for inviting me to your office. We're here at their office in downtown Pittsburgh. You guys have a couple offices throughout the region, don't you?
Yeah, we sure do. In fact, we've got offices in Philadelphia as well as Pittsburgh and Pennsylvania. We've got offices in Ohio and Cleveland, Columbus and Cincinnati, Michigan and Detroit, Chicago and Illinois.
You're all over the place.
Yeah, we cover a good portion of the Midwest Great Lakes region, don't we?
Very cool. And so today we're talking about a topic that I think a lot of us are a little bit nervous about in the mortgage industry, which is delinquencies, foreclosure, forbearance, and really what we're seeing in those trends and how that's going to be impacted. So I'll turn it over to you guys. Let's just start with what are you guys, seeing as professionals? What is your background? What have you been experiencing here at Weltman?
Sure. I'll start.
Go ahead.
I've been with Weltman for 18 years now. I'm a shareholder and the chair of the real estate default group. My specialty is foreclosure and title litigation. I've been doing that since 2004. So we've been representing mortgage lenders, mortgage servicers, all throughout different times during the financial pendulum swing, so to speak, where we've seen everything from the crisis back in 2007, and then as that went away, and we moved into the COVID era, and now we're moving out of the COVID era, and it's a very unique time, I think, in our industry, and the pendulum once again is swinging, and we'll get to talking about all of that.
Right. We have a little bit of a volatile market right now.
Yeah.
So, and Scott, tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I head up the firm's bankruptcy practice. I'm with the firm now for 18 years or so, been in the industry for about 25. Our practice is really wide ranging. We do represent mortgage servicers and lenders, commercial, consumer, bankruptcy, strictly from the creditor side, auto loans, credit cards, student loans. We've got our hands in a lot of areas, and we, like everyone else, we've seen both sides of the equation at this point, where bankruptcies were booming, and we've seen where bankruptcies during and as a result of COVID were really at record low. So we're rebuilding up from a point of you had to go back to the 80s to find a level when bankruptcy filings were that low, and the first quarter of this year is certainly trending upwards, and we'll sort of get into that.
Okay, absolutely. So I think that's a really good jumping off point for us here. And let's go back in time a little bit. Let's start with 2009 and that mortgage crisis. Do you feel that there are any lessons that we learned in that 2009 mortgage crisis that would be beneficial for today?
Yeah. In fact, I think there's a lot that we learned from that crisis. Going back to 2009 and the passage and promulgation of the Dodd-Frank Act, we learned a lot because lenders were doing things in a way that caused loans to go into default. And that's kind of what caused the foreclosure crisis at the onset of the housing crash.
Okay.
They were lending at 125% loan to value. They were lending to low credit borrowers. They were putting people in mortgages that they shouldn't have. And to that end, the government stepped in and said, we've got to pull the reins back, and they passed the Dodd-Frank Act. And that kind of set the pavement for an era where we could get out of the foreclosure crisis, because lending practices became more streamlined, they became more responsible.
Yeah, there's more regulation in place today.
More regulation, which is a good thing, but I think what we're seeing now coming out of COVID. So what happened when we went into COVID? We were at record lows as far as mortgage defaults. The economy was just humming along. And then COVID hits and the bottom falls out. There's the shutdown. The government pretty
Right.
much kills a good portion of the economy. People have become instantly unemployed, and everything is kind of in limbo. Are people going to be able to pay their mortgages?
Right.
How are we going to proceed? And the government says, okay, we've got a problem, kind of caused by the government,
Right.
but that's another discussion. Now we've got to find a solution. The solution was we're going to put a foreclosure moratorium out, and we're going to institute COVID forbearances,
Okay.
which essentially told the servicers the borrowers don't have to pay if they have a hardship. And it was very easy to apply for these forbearances. You basically had to call your lender and say, I have a hardship due to COVID, and you were in. Whereas previously, during the post-Dodd-Frank era, the loss mitigation process was very, it was intense. Borrowers had to submit pages and pages of documents, and it could take months before they would get reviewed for a loss mitigation plan. And if they could qualify, the communication wasn't the greatest. And I think what we learned from that era and what the government is trying to resolve now is, okay, let's short track it. Let's give people the benefit of the doubt. The lending, because of the post-Dodd-Frank era, lending practices were tightened, and therefore the people who are in these mortgages belong in the mortgages. There's that assumption, and therefore if they've suffered a hardship, they should be put into a forbearance plan. And that worked. It was phenomenal. You had millions of people who had suffered hardship